I appointed Mrs. Tackleton to meet me at the church, and I'll swear I passed her on the road on the way here. Oh, here she is! I beg your pardon, sir. I haven't the pleasure of knowing you, but if you can do me the favour to spare this young lady, she has a rather particular engagement this morning." "But I can't spare her," returned Edward. "I couldn't think of it." "What do you mean, you vagabond?" said Tackleton. "I mean that, as I can make allowance for your being vexed," returned the other with a smile, "I am as deaf to harsh discourse this morning as I was to all discourse last night." The look that Tackleton bestowed upon him, and the start he gave. "I am sorry, sir," said Edward, holding out May's left hand, and especially the third finger, "that the lady can't accompany you to church, but as she has been there once this morning, perhaps you'll excuse her." Tackleton looked hard at the third finger, and took a little piece of silver paper, apparently containing a ring, from his waistcoat pocket. "Miss Slowboy," said Tackleton, "will you have the kindness to throw that in the fire? Thank ye." "It was a previous engagement, quite an old engagement, that prevented my wife from keeping her appointment with you, I assure you," said Edward. "Mr. Tackleton will do me the justice to acknowledge that I revealed it to him faithfully, and that I told him many times I never could forget it," said May, blushing. "Oh, certainly," said Tackleton. "Oh, to be sure. Oh, that's all right. It's quite correct. Mrs. Edward Plummer, I infer?" "That's the name," returned the bridegroom. "Ah, I shouldn't have known you, sir," said Tackleton, scrutinizing his face narrowly, and making a low bow. "I give you joy, sir." "Thank ye." "Mrs. Peerybingle," said Tackleton, turning suddenly to where she stood with her husband, "I'm sorry. You haven't done me a very great kindness, but, upon my life, I am sorry. You are better than I thought you. John Peerybingle, I am sorry. You understand me. That's enough. It's quite correct, ladies and gentlemen all, and perfectly satisfactory. Good morning." With these words he carried it off, and carried himself too, merely stopping at the door to take the flowers and favours from his horse's head, and to kick that animal once in the ribs, as a means of informing him that there was a screw loose in his arrangements. Of course it became a serious duty now to make such a day of it as should mark these events for the high feast and festival in the Peerybingle calendar for evermore. Accordingly, Dot went to work to produce such an entertainment as should reflect undying honour on the house and on every one concerned, and, in a very short space of time, she was up to her dimpled elbows in flour, and whitening the carrier's coat every time he came near her, by stopping to give him a kiss. That good fellow washed the greens, and peeled the turnips, and broke the plates, and upset iron pots full of cold water on the fire, and made himself useful in all sorts of ways, while a couple of professional assistants, hastily called in from somewhere in the neighbourhood, as on a point of life or death, ran against each other in all the doorways and round the corners, and everybody tumbled over Tilly Slowboy and the baby everywhere. Tilly never came out in such force before. Her ubiquity was a theme of general admiration. She was a stumbling block in the passage at 25 minutes past 2, a man-trap in the kitchen at 2:30 precisely, and a pitfall in the garret at 25 minutes to 3. The baby's head was, as it were, a test and touchstone for every description of matter, animal, vegetable, and mineral. Nothing was in use that day that didn't come, at some time or other, in close acquaintance with it. Then there was a great expedition set on foot to go to find Mrs. Fielding, and to be dismally penitent to the excellent gentlewoman, and to bring her back, by force if needed, to be happy and forgiving. And when the expedition first discovered her, she would listen to no terms at all, but said, an unspeakable number of times, that ever should she have lived to see the day, and couldn't be got to say anything else except, "Now carry me to the grave," which seemed absurd, on account of her not being dead, or anything at all like it. After a time she lapsed into a state of dreadful calmness, and observed that, when that unfortunate train of circumstances had occurred in the indigo trade, she had foreseen that she would be exposed, during her whole life, to every species of insult and contumely, and that she was glad to find it was the case, and begged they wouldn't trouble themselves about her, for what would she? Oh dear, nobody! But would forget that such a being lived, and would take their course in life without her. From this bitterly sarcastic mood she passed into an angry one, in which she gave vent to the remarkable expression that the worm would turn if trodden on, and after that she yielded to a soft regret, and said, if they had only given her their confidence, what might she not have had it in her power to suggest? Taking advantage of this crisis in her feelings, the expedition embraced her, and she very soon had her gloves on, and was on her way to John Peerybingle's in a state of unimpeachable gentility, with a paper parcel at her side containing a cap of state, almost as tall and quite as stiff as a mitre. Then there were Dot's father and mother to come in another little chaise, and they were behind their time, and fears were entertained, and there was much looking out for them down the road, and Mrs. Fielding always would look in the wrong and morally impossible direction, and, being apprised thereof, hoped she might take the liberty of looking where she pleased. At last they came, a chubby little couple, jogging along in a snug and comfortable little way that quite belonged to the Dot family, and Dot and her mother, side by side, were wonderful to see, they were so like each other. Then Dot's mother had to renew her acquaintance with May's mother, and May's mother always stood on her gentility, and Dot's mother never stood on anything but her active little feet. And old Dot, so to call Dot's father, I forgot it wasn't his right name, but never mind, took liberties and shook hands at first sight, and seemed to think a cap but so much starch and muslin, and didn't defer himself at all to the indigo trade, but said there was no help for it now, and, in Mrs. Fielding's summing up, was a good-natured kind of man, but coarse, my dear. I wouldn't have missed Dot doing the honours in her wedding gown, my benison on her bright face, for any money. No, nor the good carrier, so jovial and so ruddy, at the bottom of the table, nor the brown, fresh sailor fellow and his handsome wife, nor any one among them. To have missed the dinner would have been to miss as jolly and stout a meal as a man need eat, and to have missed the overflowing cups in which they drank the wedding day would have been the greatest miss of all. After dinner, Caleb sang the song about the sparkling bowl. As I'm a living man, hoping to keep so for a year or two, he sang it through. And by the by, the most unlooked-for incident occurred, just as he finished the last verse. There was a tap at the door, and a man came staggering in without saying with your leave, or by your leave, with something heavy on his head. Setting this down in the middle of the table, symmetrically in the centre of the nuts and apples, he said, "Mr. Tackleton's compliments, and as he hasn't got no use for the cake himself, p'raps you'll eat it." And with those words he walked off. There was some surprise among the company, as you may imagine. Mrs. Fielding, being a lady of infinite discernment, suggested that the cake was poisoned, and related a narrative of a cake which, within her knowledge, had turned a seminary for young ladies blue, but she was overruled by acclamation, and the cake was cut by May with much ceremony and rejoicing. I don't think anyone had tasted it, when there came another tap at the door, and the same man appeared again, having under his arm a vast brown paper parcel. "Mr. Tackleton's compliments, and he's sent a few toys for the babby. They ain't ugly." After the delivery of which expressions he retired again. The whole party would have experienced great difficulty in finding words for their astonishment, even if they had had ample time to seek them. But they had none at all, for the messenger had scarcely shut the door behind him when there came another tap, and Tackleton himself walked in. "Mrs. Peerybingle," said the toy merchant, hat in hand, "I'm sorry. I'm more sorry than I was this morning. I've had time to think of it. John Peerybingle, I am sour by disposition, but I can't help being sweetened more or less by coming face to face with such a man as you. Caleb, this unconscious little nurse gave me a broken hint last night, of which I have found the thread. I blush to think how easily I might have bound you and your daughter to me, and what a miserable idiot I was when I took her for one. Friends, one and all, my house is very lonely tonight. I have not so much as a cricket on my hearth. I have scared them all away. Be gracious to me. Let me join this happy party." He was at home in 5 minutes. You never saw such a fellow. What had he been doing with himself all his life, never to have known before his great capacity of being jovial? Or what had the fairies been doing with him, to have effected such a change? "John, you won't send me home this evening, will you?" whispered Dot. He had been very near it, though. There wanted but one living creature to make the party complete, and, in the twinkling of an eye, there he was, very thirsty, with hard running, and engaged in hopeless endeavours to squeeze his head into a narrow pitcher. He had gone with the cart to its journey's end, very much disgusted with the absence of his master, and stupendously rebellious to the deputy. after lingering about the stable for some little time, vainly attempting to incite the old horse to the mutinous